Hello, folks, and welcome back. I'm executive producer of the Electric Election Roadtrip, Saul Spady, alongside our host, Benjamin Backer. I found my way back because it's our final podcast, and we are at High West Distillery in Utah. We are with Isaac and Ted. Ted, I'm going to throw it to you. Can you tell us exactly where we are for our listeners and let them know kind of how exciting this final podcast is?
We are in the beautiful city of Wanship, Utah. On Blue Sky Ranch. So we are on a property that links about 3,500 acres. We decided years ago, as we were expanding out and we were running out of room in downtown Park City of where we were going to build our distillery, and David Perkins, our founder, and one of our other investors who controls the property out here, had this brilliant idea to build a state-of-the-art distillery out in the middle of nowhere.
On top of a mountain.
Yeah, on top of a mountain that Isaac gets to distill the delicious liquid in this beautiful setting.
Well, speaking of mountains, you guys like mountains, and you like the environment, and you guys are doing a lot to protect it. I guess it'd be great to just kind of hear, just from the broad sense, what you're working on sustainability, because I know it's at the core of this distillery's work.
Yeah, so we've got kind of two components of it. We were going to speak about our work with the American Prairie Reserve and then some of the stuff we're doing from an operations standpoint. Where do you guys want to start?
Let's start with the operations.
Okay, great. I'll take that one then. So we focus on sustainability here at High West from a couple different viewpoints. So we'll kind of go grain to glass or grain to waste maybe. All of our grain that we use here on site at the distillery is sourced from within a day's drive of the distillery. So we contract grow a couple different varieties of grain, mostly rye and barley, with local farmers, and then we're entering into talks with an organization in southwestern Colorado to grow our own variety of corn. So we'll have really tight control over the quality and the technical specifications of our raw materials coming on site, but then also minimize our carbon footprint related to freight from coming on around the country.
Ted, I'd love to jump back a little bit and get some perspective on High West Distillery in general. I read online that this was the first distillery that was created in Utah since Prohibition. You said it was even further back than that. Can you kind of let our listeners know how much effort and energy went into both creating this really self-sustaining distillery, but then the history of just kind of starting a distillery in Utah in general?
Well, the whole the short version is, so David had this love of bourbon, right? Love of whiskey, and David Perkins, the founder, as well as a love of the West, right? He was from Georgia, lived up in the Northeast, but always had a fascination as a kid with the cowboys and the West and the freedom and all that. And so when he had the epiphany to really put some energy behind creating a distillery, Utah and Park City was his first choice because it was a place that he loved to be. The history of kind of spirits in Utah is it wasn't just Prohibition, but it was actually Brigham Young and the Mormon pioneers that came over the hill back in the 1860s. Whiskey was part of their culture, right? It was a large bartering tool, right? So it was a commodity that they used, but alcohol was also the anesthetic at the time. So Brigham Young and the church were big distillers. Nobody had attempted to start a distillery legally since then. So we always joke that legally. We always joke that David had to, when he had the idea and he had his business plan, he had to go to the legislature and they had to find the old bylaws and blow all the dust off. So to educate all the governor and the state that, hey, you can do a distillery in Utah. And so that was kind of that was really the genesis of it. And then 2007 he put it all together, and 2009 we opened up our facility in Park City. Rendezvous was actually 2007, so we did it in a contract brewery, Wasatch Brewery. We had our still and put our first product out. And 10 years later, 11 years later, here we are out on this 3,500 acre ranch. And the link to us too on that is, the West is such a critical part of our brand. and where we've come from, and celebrating the West. It's part of our mission statement. Preserving conservation around the West is a big part of what we do, and the goal is every time Isaac makes this delicious liquid and we put it in a bottle, when we're taking a sip of that delicious juice out of the bottle and you're looking around, and you get that you get a feeling of the West in every sip.
Well, and Isaac, I mean, with the way that High West operates in terms of being sustainable, how much has that been consumer driven? How much has that been driven by this beautiful nature? How much has it been driven by the founder? Like, why is sustainability at the core of High West's work?
I think that it's been a little bit of all of those. I think part of it comes from necessity. So when we first moved into this facility, Rocky Mountain Power had a terrible grid up here. So we needed to make sure that we were being as efficient with our energy as we could, because we get brownouts or blackouts pretty frequently, and so it was important for us to be able to kind of turn the switch back on really quickly, not consume too much power and overwhelm the system. Since then, it's become better, but it's something that I strongly believe in, and I've gotten a lot of support for. Like I said before, we source a lot of almost 100% of our grain from within a day's drive of the distillery.
I'd jump in, Isaac. One of the themes of this podcast has been that you need growth to be able to invest in sustainability. Obviously, this business was smaller a decade ago. There's been incredible investment on the sustainability side, but also on growing the business. When you think about that, where do you kind of respond to that message, and how do you think High West has really kind of held that mantra? I mean, you're international, we can buy this product anywhere, but you're also setting an incredible standard out here on a mountain where when you built this facility, I mean, it cracks me up. Like, you didn't even have enough power. You guys needed to almost find the vision to make this a reality.
Yeah. So we've had that vision with us through all of design and commissioning through a couple different projects on site. We talked earlier about our still. So our still is a hybrid pot still design. So we're trying to take elements of this very traditional Scottish whiskey tradition. The pot still, our pot still is made in Scotland. It's this beautiful 1,500 gallon copper pot. But then we've also added a 4-plate column onto it as well. And so rather than having to distill our beer twice to get from about 8% to about 75% alcohol, we can go in through one pass. And so our cycle time on the still is about 8 hours. So that dramatically reduces our energy consumption on site. And so I think that David Perkins realized that we're in the West, water is scarce, power is hard to come by sometimes, and so he really tried to put that into the design of the facility.
I'm curious, Ted, when you bring the brand out to people who enjoy it, we were just joking about, off camera, Keegan Rice, our photographer, has enjoyed your brand before at some skiing Jackson Hole events. It's all about partnerships. You have sustainability concepts, you have a product that's made really sustainably, but then you also want to empower the people who probably drink this product to really be thinking along those paths. Can you talk a little bit about how you might partner with other companies to really kind of keep this energy going, even maybe just in Keegan's belly?
I'll back up a second because I want to make sure that we take time to talk about the relationship with American Prairie Reserve.
We'll get there.
But before that, so going backwards, for us, right, it was all about what we have to do with our customers is tell the story. So the conservation and the sustainability piece is really part of the story when you're tableside or at the bar talking to a customer, because regardless of somebody's political belief, right, people want the story, and people are going to make purchasing decisions based on how they feel, right, that emotional connection around the brand. So when I hear Isaac talk about, everything within a day's drive and working up in Idaho Falls with one field and one customer, it goes back to, it jogs my memory that I forgot about, back in the day, 9 years ago when we started at Park City, we had stillage, right, which is a byproduct of the distillation process. That's all the leftover beer and mash that doesn't go that stays after the process.
Everything but the alcohol. We got to do something with it. So we partnered with this guy who was starting up Fernando. Gold Creek Farms. He was a cheesemonger out in Woodland, this little teeny place, and he's a Spanish guy, and he was starting his own little business. And so we worked a deal where we would give him all of our stillage.
And so he would come. It's about a 20-minute, 30-minute drive from our saloon in downtown Park City. So we'd pump the stillage into the totes, and he'd take it out there and he'd feed it to his cows. Super rich in protein, and produces just absolutely. If you're a cheesemonger, that stillage produces just great milk to make cheese. So he would take his award-winning cheese, the stillage, the cows would eat it up. The joke after years was that the cows knew the truck when the truck would come to the farm, and they would run to the farm because they knew they had it was their 5-star meal of the week, and they would gobble up all this stillage, produce this delicious milk, cheese, and then we would take the smoked cheese and we'd bring it back into the distillery, into the saloon, and we would put it on our charcuterie plate. It was the cheese we put on our burgers. So we were able to tell this kind of full cycle story of just around stillage. And I think about from a conservation piece and a partnership piece, that really kind of set the tone for us.
And that consumer-facing side of it, which you touched on earlier, is so important because people in younger demographics are looking for purchases that they can make that are sustainable, that they can identify with emotionally. And if you guys are at the forefront of that, people are going to be drawn to that, and that's the economic benefit of doing that. But it's also the intrinsic value that you guys can have waking up each day with this as the background and know that you're doing something in your day-to-day life on the business front to protect it.
Well, that carries almost 10 years further, because you were talking about now you might use some of that waste and actually goes to you pipe something to a waste energy management plant almost like 60, 70 miles away, right? And that creates energy. Can you go into a little depth to that?
So this stillage that we're talking about, it's our waste product. Apart from feeding animals, we didn't totally understand what we could do with it, but it's a big problem. We generate 25,000 gallons a week, something like that. And so now we have taken that waste management in-house. We pump it onto one of our trucks. They drive down to North Salt Lake, and then it goes to the North Salt Lake wastewater treatment facility, where it goes into an anaerobic digester and creates energy back for the grid. So we're able to to give back. So
we all know what an anaerobic digester is, right?
We actually visited one.
That would be our third. Poop to power is really what it's doing, right? In the layman's term. No, it's so exciting because it makes me think. Really, at the beginning of this year, we visited this sounds really crazy. This black soldier fly larva farm where they're breeding these little maggots that eat the same discharge from a different brewery or distillery down in Texas near College Station. And there's so much innovation coming out of these breweries because you have waste that you as a business want to handle and deal with, and you come up with innovative solutions, either black soldier fly larva, which is a little out there, or in this case an anaerobic digestion and turning it into power. It's just really exciting stuff, Benji.
It really is. And I mean, it really comes down to the fact that everyone's trying to do their part in the business community when they're thinking about it from the consumer lens and thinking about it from the future. You're not thinking about right now, you're thinking about the next 10, 20 years. You want to have a sustainable business going into the future, and you want to have young people working for you and supporting you by purchasing your products. And that is at the forefront of why, a lot of people are doing sustainability efforts. But, by the way, it also helps economically because you're taking a waste product and you're turning it into something that benefits society. And that's, something that you guys are investing in, but you're also doing something that people care a lot about on the public lands and private land side and just protecting wildlife. So we've talked about energy, and we've talked about, just general conservation and some climate, benefits that you guys are working on. But talk to us about American Prairie Reserve. A lot of people don't know what American Prairie Reserve is. We're big fans of it at the Conservation Coalition, but talk about what it is and what you're doing to be involved.
Well, it really goes back to our original mission statement and founding, which was preserving the American West was part of our mission statement at the very beginning. And we live in a state that has I don't know the details, but public lands that we all use as residents of Utah and employees of High West, right? We're always down south, we're in the swell, we're wherever. It came about 8 years ago when we were toying around with this idea of launching a bourbon. And one of our board members and original investors had been involved, Mike Leventhal, with the American Prairie Reserve in its infancy. And he brought the idea to David around, hey, we're tooling around with this launching a bourbon. What if we partnered with the American Prairie Reserve, and we did kind of that give back, right, where we negotiate some sort of a pre-tax sales donation based on every bottle sold back to the reserve. So we launched the American Prairie Reserve, is what it was called back in the day.
Product, by the way.
Fantastic, delicious, sweet bourbon, and we gave 10% of our post-tax profits to the reserve. And that relationship is now 8 years old. And selfishly, I feel pretty excited because I was able to this last summer, just a couple months ago, September, I may be one of the first that actually kind of put boots on the ground in the reserve. And it was just a cool experience. And I've gotten to know the people and interfaced with the group. And I'm really starting to understand what their mission is and what their goals are up there in the reserve. And they see High West, and we see them as that continuation of the original back of the napkin, pencil sketch 12, 14 years ago with David around, the tenets of the business and preserving the West. And again, that has grown into this relationship that is, it's getting more and more tight as the months and years go by.
And can you tell people what that 10% goes to, and like what American Prairie Reserve does, which is incredible work?
Yeah, so what American Prairie is trying to do, so their big picture is they're trying to restore and preserve the ecosystem up there in Montana back to pre-mid 1800s, pre-Homesteader Act of 1862, and they're trying to link millions of acres of property, combination of public lands along the Missouri River up there in northeast Montana, with stitching together some private lands, the people that are trying to sell, and they go in and compete with other large companies if a ranch wants to sell, and trying to put together this piece and ultimately bring the bison back, these conservation herds, and again preserve the ecosystem and get that ecosystem back to a couple hundred years ago where it was just a thriving, healthy land. Not that it isn't necessarily now, but just trying to get back to pre-days.
But what an incredible full circle, Benji, because we started out our first podcast on the road on Ted Turner's ranch, overlooking wild bison herds and learning about how private conservation helped bring back the bison. And now we're learning about how your distillery is investing in really continuing that tradition through a nonprofit. I want to actually jump to you, Isaac, because you said something off camera that as a third generation Seattleite, I really appealed to. You're born and raised in Utah. Salt Lake City is one of the fastest growing cities in the country over the last 10 years. Beautiful lands behind us, beautiful national parks, but as somebody who's born and raised here, you have to be teaching the transplants to care about this land the way you do. How do we do that as businesses, let's say as High West Distillery, trying to teach other businesses to kind of invest the way this business has, and how do we do it just as individuals, as a person who loves their home, who wants to teach these transplants that maybe be stealing our Lime bikes or something like that, to take better care of our land?
Yeah, great question.
Lime bike stealing.
Ooh.
That made a way into the podcast. Finally.
Sorry, Isaac.
So, I think it's a really good question, Salt. So, I was raised going to national parks, going to BLM land, going to national forests, and really developed an appreciation of public lands and just like the freedom that it affords you. And I think that Utah is really, really fortunate to have a lot of public access destinations of all different types, right? So we're in Park City, Utah. So within 5 hours, we could be in high alpine mountains. We could be in crazy red rock desert and everything in between. And so we as Utahns, whether that be me who's grown up here or anybody else who's moved here to experience it, we have this awesome opportunity and potentially obligation to enjoy this, like the public access we have. So I think us as a business can feature some of that with work that we're doing with the American Prairie Reserve, with stories and events that we could hold, doing river cleanups on public land, whatever. But I think that we as an organization have taken steps in that direction, and it's exciting to be a part of it.
Well, and Ted, I'd like you to elaborate this a little bit more, but American Prairie Reserve is instilling this love for the wild in a way that I think hasn't really been done before, because you're allowing private conservation to be at the forefront of kind of restoring, wildlife to the way it was and habitat to the way it was, but you're allowing all different types, with your partnership with the American Prairie Reserve, you're allowing all different types of people to use that land for different purposes and engage with it and be there. Can you expand on that a little bit and why that kind of plays into Saul's question?
There's, the two things they're really focused on is stitching together the largest continuous land mass, kind of fenceless in the lower 48.
About the size of Connecticut, right?
That's what it currently is, and it's ultimately the goal is to have it be larger. But they also so their focus is on creating their own property that is 100% focused on conservation. But what I've learned with some time and meeting with people up there on the land, and in their discovery center that's being built in Lewistown, all that stuff, they're also great educators, and they're trying to educate ranchers all over Montana about conservation efforts within the confines of the business. I mean, nobody doubts that Montana. I mean, you think of ranching and wide open in the West and American Prairie. I mean, I think most people would you go to Big Sky Country in Montana. And so part of their mission as well is to educate the ranchers that are not interested in selling, that are not part of, that don't fit their grid as far as their ultimate land, on how to create wildlife corridors, how to change the way maybe you graze your cattle to provide greater biodiversity, create these wildlife corridors where one of the cool little things is as part of their Wild Sky program, which is a conservation based way of ranching, right? Just one of the little things, and ranchers can come in and they can subscribe to this, and then the American Prairie will come back and they will guarantee a premium on their product, so on their cattle. It's creating wildlife corridors where you take, on a typical barbed wire fence, the top rung and the lower two rungs are barbless to allow for the antelope and the elk and the deer and the fox to migrate through without having to take the fence down. And so I think that all ties, and I go back to, for us, right, it all gets back to that conservation piece. And one of the things we did, again, going back to our foundation, was, we were very clear on how we were going to donate money that we put aside for the numerous requests from nonprofits and such. And one of our criteria were we were going to donate to companies and nonprofits that were part of conserving and preserving the American West.
I absolutely love that concept, because I come from a family that our number one issue is homelessness, but we do it and we ask our customers to round up. They round up just a little bit, or they throw their change in a jar. And for a long time, we just invested in homelessness as a company ourselves. And then we kind of came to this point where it got pretty bad in the community, and we decided we were going to put our 10,000 up and ask other communities to join with us. We were able to get other businesses to match that 10,000. We were able to do a crowdfund to build a shelter. But it really makes me think about what you're doing, and specifically, Isaac, what you're doing here. You're a distiller. You make this product, but you're so passionate about sustainability. Your company is really driving this forward. Can we go back to that education standpoint? How do you go about educating other distillers to maybe, emerge out of their bubble of making a really good craft liquor and in engaging in these sustainability practices that you're so passionate about?
There are very, very few things about our process here at High West that I won't share. So, I'll try and be an open book. And so, we've had a couple distillers who have worked for us who have gone on to bigger and better things and taken really cool positions at other companies. And, I think that talking about sourcing and talking about, this is what you should be looking at from a malt certificate of analysis standpoint, things like that. I think that's really important for our industry. One thing I did want to touch on is we look to the future and how we can kind of bring more people into the fold. The U.S. government just is talking about expanding their Energy Star program and coming up with a specific certification for distilleries. And so people who want to be a part of it will be graded on a 0 to 100 sliding scale. And based on your position there, you can have different certifications or different awards. They're also looking at your incremental growth in like a rolling 5-year term. So if you improve your energy consumption by X, then you're eligible for an award. And then it brings people together in this community to share stories, say, hey, this is something that we really struggled with, and this is how we fixed it, and just create a forum where you can share and help grow the industry, because by its very nature, distilling is really energy intensive. You're boiling a bunch of alcohol for, our cycle time's 8 hours, right? So you have all of this energy applied to it. And so the better we can structure our business, the better we can structure our operations. It's great from a consumer story standpoint, but it helps the bottom line. It helps, all of us get behind the goal and the goal of the team and the business. And it just propels us forward. I think it builds longevity into our business. What
I really like about that is kind of it would set up an opportunity for you guys to compete with one another to be the most sustainable, but also collaborate at the same time. And there isn't a market for that enough in the corporate community, let alone just distilleries. But I mean, all industries want to be more sustainable. They aren't connecting with one another, as we found out on this trip, and they aren't able to, and there's really no structure there. And so I think, to your point, that would be incredibly impactful for not just this industry, but other industries that could be able to learn from each other and compete with one another, and to the consumer be able to say, we are sustainable and there's proof behind it, and here's how we're doing compared to other companies.
Well, and to even button that up and connect it makes me think, when you were talking about dusting off the old laws to prove that we can have a distillery here, and it was actually Brigham Young who started it. On this journey, we went and saw the very first wind turbine farm that was offshore, and it was pushed forward by a Republican governor. And it makes me think about what you're doing with the Conservation Coalition, Benji. You're trying to bring together conservatives, liberals, business people, enviropreneurs to try to build these bridges that you're doing here in the liquor industry, to really kind of build this bridge of changing and making America a more sustainable place going forward. It's just really exciting stuff. I want to throw back, because you told me I could have a drink. Yep. And it's not here yet, but we've spent a lot of time talking about sustainability. And can each of you talk a little bit about your favorite product that's produced here at High West, and tell us, get me excited for the beverages that are going to be in front of us soon.
Well, let's just clarify one thing. The delicious whiskey that Isaac produces is a highly sustainable product over time, as opposed to beer or anything else. So that it can last in a bottle for a long time. There's not really an expiration date.
It's a good investment.
It's an investment. Sustainable investment.
So Isaac, tell us a little bit about the whiskey here.
So one product that I'll touch on briefly that I'm really excited about, it's near and dear to me and the hearts of my teammates, is High Country Single Malt. So that will be released on December 1st. It's a really limited offering this year. Next year, the year after, we're hoping to grow the brand, so you'll be able to see it out in the market. We'll do about 450 cases this year. It's 100% High West own make whiskey that's in the bottles. So we started off, Ted mentioned it before, making Rendezvous Rye. We've been pretty transparent about purchasing whiskey from other facilities and blending it together and then packaging it as our own. So we're not just taking some whiskey from MGP, putting it into a bottle and kicking it out the door. We're taking a whole bunch of different whiskeys and putting it out. As you can see behind us, we've made a lot of investment in our new make spirit production. And so we're trying to complete that narrative and say, we've already shown ourselves to be competent blenders, but we're also showing that we can be competent distillers as too. And so High Country Single Malt, for me, is that completion of the narrative, and something that I think we all take really seriously and have a lot of pride in. So that's my personal favorite product.
I have a couple.
My man.
Primarily because we do put part of our own make in all of our core product,
except for American Prairie Bourbon, which I'm happy to talk about.
Yeah, which we're working on. Rendezvous is the go-to for me. Just the edge, the soft edges, the butteriness of it. But I think we have a program now that has really been unique, and it's called our Barrel Select program. And I've had a couple of products out of that are one-timer, unique ones. But we took our Campfire blend, which is a blend of bourbon, rye, and a peated Scotch. That is absolutely delicious. We call it our blue cheese whiskey. It's a love it or hate it, right? And the people that hate it, it's good because it means it's more for those of us that love it. But we took this, we took this Campfire and we put it in a freshly dumped, juicy Jamaican rum barrel. And so we let it sit in this barrel for 9 months. And so you pull, so it breathes, and you pull all the rum and the juicy and those sweet, those molasses characteristics into it, and it's just this dark, delicious, and it is just the most. I was blown away. And this 2 years in a row we've done this one, and my bottle is going to last a little while, not too long. But that's the one. And that program is just super fun of what we do. I think this year we have 400 where we source all these different barrels from all over the world. Tara, our little QC queen over there, just does a great job. And we put a bunch of different product, our own make, and we let it sit. So it's a barrel finished. It's a barrel finished whiskey. So you take a finished whiskey, put it in a barrel, and let it sit, and then have it come out. And so those are my two.
Well, I mean, Americans love your whiskey, and they love your company, and they might not know about all the sustainability efforts here, but they're incredible. One final question from me is, there are a lot of young consumers out there that want to purchase alcohol, but they also want to purchase sustainably. What can they do to drive these sorts of efforts forward, not only within your company, but in the entire industry?
They being young consumers?
Drink High West.
Yeah. Hashtag.
I can just
hashtag drink High West. Hashtag drink High West. Yeah, that's it. I'm.
You think about it. I'll take this.
Yeah, you're younger than I am, so this might be more directed to you.
I got about the same amount of gray, I think.
I'm not sure.
So, one of the things the COVID era has been interesting, challenging, presenting a lot of challenges every month. It seems like one of the ways that we try to get past it is going to the buzzword around is omni. What is it? Like an omni-channel distribution network. Thank you. So we started selling online. So a couple markets, I think 10 markets now, you can go online, order through. I think Drizzly is one of our collaborators, and order High West online, which is new for us. Super exciting. And I think just do your research. I think reading online. I think that there is information out there, and I think for people who are invested in buying sustainably, I think that you got to do your research and ask the right questions and don't be afraid.
I think the two words that come to me is we've always, with our sustainability and conservation efforts, we've always participated, but we haven't publicized. And that was really from an early marketing perspective is, our marketing was the saloon, and it was guests coming in and having a delicious old fashioned in Manhattan at the bar, or having a schnitzel or a killer burger in the restaurant. And then, our marketing efforts were tableside and face to face. And we've always used restraint from the standpoint of talking about those conservation and sustainability efforts, because that we want it to be more about the liquid, and we want to be able to communicate face to face. And I think with American Prairie, it's a little more, the story's a little more out there for people that kind of look behind the curtain and read the label, and even in our marketing efforts. So I guess where I'm going with that is the young people just gotta go online, or they gotta come into the saloon or out here at the refectory, sit at the bar and have the most delicious old fashioned you've ever had, and let our people kind of tell the story and talk. And that's how I think we we create longevity, and that's, I think, the most important way that we can tell our story outside of opportunities like this with people that are like yourselves that are committed to the cause. And this is the way we love to publicize what it is that we do.
Well, this is so impactful. I mean, this journey started almost 50 days ago. I was almost tearing up listening to that. I don't even know why. I just want that bourbon or that whiskey. No, storytelling is so powerful and important. And I know you might be a little shy of telling your sustainability story, but we have to come in here and we need to shout it out. That's why we have gone around the country, because these stories are so impactful. Businesses are doing so much, and I think it needs to go further than that delicious old fashioned. And Benji, that's where I'm going to maybe throw it to you for some final words here, because I'm losing mine. But this journey is about telling the story of America's sustainability investment, green energy investment, and trying to bring us all together, because we're a couple days from an election. We're all trying to be spread apart. But what we've learned on this journey is we have a common cause in our investment, in our climate, and in our backyards. And if we can bring everybody together, if we can have these distilleries compete, if we can have politicians compete to be the most environmental and be a real steward of bipartisanship, we might create change that we can't possibly imagine on this precipice of what might be a tough day for our country.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, I just think in general it's so important that those who are working on these issues lean in, not just on the work, which you guys are already doing, but on telling the story, because it puts the pressure on others to do the same. It also helps uplift people. If people know that they're drinking something sustainable, they're going to be happy about it. There's a little bit of extra, happiness that comes from that. And as we visited 33 different states up until now, we've seen these solutions at all different parts of the country, from all different backgrounds, from agriculture to energy to infrastructure, and everyone wants to do the right thing, but they need to be equipped with the knowledge to do it. And it's going to take the High West of the world to lean in even more, to say to your consumers in 50 states and internationally that this is part of the answer, that you guys are part of the answer to fighting climate change and conserving wild spaces. You're not the only answer, but you're part of it, and you're doing your part as a business, because that's what the 21st century and fighting climate change is going to be all about.
I'd say in summary, we've ended every conversation by letting our guests kind of give us a piece of advice for, well, it was what we should do next on this road trip, but we got a couple days in Utah, and we might have some national parks. What's your advice for somebody coming to Utah? What should they see if they have 3 days after they've, of course, hit High West Distillery?
I'll defer first response to the one who grew here.
Sure. My favorite national park is Canyonlands. I think that it's stunningly beautiful. It's pretty remote. If you go into the right access point, I would highly recommend that. Goblin Valley is unbelievable. That would be a great adventure as well. Hard to go wrong. Fish Lake National Forest would be cold but beautiful right now. So
I'm going to go to the west of the Green in the Colorado, to the other side of that Colorado Plateau, which is down in the Capitol Reef, Grand Staircase, and Bryce. The Grand
Bears Ears.
Bears Ears is on the other side, but my favorite is down in that Boulder Town and Torrey, and you do the drive from Torrey over to Bryce, and I think Bryce is one of the most spectacular for a day. And I have looked because I thought about sneaking out for a day over the weekend. The weather down there right now is in the mid 60s for the high. You get to Zion and it's in the 70s. And big open blue skies, and that drive and that landscape from Torrey over into Escalante and then over into Bryce is spectacular.
The whole state.
Yeah.
Well, but I was going to say, in the end, Benji, we're about to do that drive, man. That's what comes up next for us. I'm excited.
I'm going to throw a little bait out there for the two of you. So, no, just saying, right? So, Bryce is protected, Canyonlands is protected, Arch is protected, right? The Mighty Five, Capitol Reef is all protective. Grand Staircase is question mark, right, as a national monument, right? That is up for debate. There's the lawsuits because the president had shrunk that whole area, and when you get down there and you see the vastness and the remoteness and the way the staircase actually works, and you get boots on the ground and you see that landscape. It might just be enough for a couple of people that are obviously passionate about conservation. Could help in the fight to maintain its original boundaries and that original landscape.
Opportunity accepted.
Yeah, well, and we're going to drive there. We're going to go look at it. And I know this I'm speaking on behalf of Benji here, but for the Conservation Coalition, their mission started 4 years ago, and it's not meant to stop in 2020. This is going to be a battle for all of us. We're all millennials in the 21st century. This is our century of record, and the planet will really be how we are judged, how it looks when it closes. And so
it's imperative for us to keep wild spaces wild, and that doesn't just mean these open, vast, amazing places. It also just means this globe. It's a wild globe, and we're having a negative impact on it, and the only thing we can do is try to improve it.
Well, and that's what the goal of the electric election road trip was. We wanted to catalyze action, and now, Benji, we got to catalyze some action because we got to go look at these national parks. We have to go get some perspective because, as I said,
some fun to be had.
Yeah, because this doesn't end in 2020. For everybody out there who's been on this journey with us, who's been listening, who's been enjoying these podcasts, these are meant to be educational. They're meant to inspire action. We're hoping you go out and you get involved in your community, start a business, get sustainable. Drink some High West whiskey, maybe. That's what we're about to do. But either way, you can make a difference, and there's something to be learned. It's been an absolute pleasure to be a part of this journey as the executive producer. Benji, close us out.
Well, to our viewers, thank you so much for your support along this entire journey. It has been an incredible journey and one that we'll never forget, and I truly hope that it's inspired people to take action. It has also provided some hope amidst one of the toughest times in our country's history, and to know that the future is sustainable and that there are people here in Utah and in pretty much every state across the country trying to do the right thing. We need more of them, we need more of you, and we're so honored to have taken this journey alongside you.
Well, with that, see you in 2021, folks.